Come, all ye faithful, joyful and triumphant. Come ye to Bethlehem. Come and behold him, born the King of angels. Come, let us adore him. Come, let us adore him. Come, let us adore him, Christ the Lord. Sing, choirs of angels, sing in exultation. Sing, all ye citizens of heaven above. Glory to God in the highest. Come, let us adore him. Come, let us adore him. Come, let us adore him, Christ the Lord.
Well, good morning. I'm glad you're here with me today. This is Rick Patterson, your pastor, your host, your teacher today with Christ Life Center, CLC TV here in the beautiful city of Miami, Florida, 305. It gets no prettier than this. Glad you joined with me today. We've got a lot of things we're going to talk about today. We're going to continue our teaching concerning the Jesus Christ and the birth of Jesus Christ, the resurrection of Jesus Christ, proving that Jesus Christ and his deity, that he is God manifested in the flesh. Now, before we get into today's teaching, I want to just share a couple things with you. First of all, you can join us every Sunday morning at 1047 at 9775 Southwest 87th Avenue in Miami, Florida. We meet at the Riviera Preparatory School at the Auditorium. It's the same location we have been ministering from in Miami for the last 40 years. You are invited to join with us. You can also go to our website, CHRISTLIFECENTER.org, CHRISTLIFECENTER.org, and we are now putting a lot of information there. In fact, we're putting 356 prophecies concerning Jesus Christ and the fulfillment of those on a PDF file. You can download it. It's free of charge. I want to also encourage you to share this broadcast, share the stream link to your social media, your friends. Send it out and allow this to go forth and be able to reach out and expand our broadcast to other people around the world. Want to also suggest to you, we have a Wednesday night Bible study every Wednesday night at 9 p.m. on Zoom. It is an university level intensive Bible study. You're going to learn things that you've never heard before, taught based on the Bible, based upon facts. You can email me, rick@patterson.org. I'll send you the link, the Zoom link, and you're encouraged to join with us every Wednesday night. Now, also you'll see on the website there or on the screen, you'll see a QR code. You can click on that QR code, take a picture of the QR code on your phone. It will take you to a secure website where you can give. And you can also give by texting 73256, 73256, Christ Life Center, one word in the subject line. A menu will come up, secure menu, in which you can give by credit card. You can set up a one-time donation, a weekly donation, and we encourage you to use this technique to be able to give and so forth. Now, if you'd like to give by check or send it, you can send it to P.O. Box 5645, Miami, Florida 33216. Now, we're going to get into today's teaching, but before we get into today's teaching, I think it's kind of interesting because a lot of people think that, they think that I just get up in the morning, turn on the computer, and, just look at the screen. Well, let me just show you something here. This is a example of the screens. I've got two computers, several monitors, all of these working to try to create a quality broadcast for you and your family. This takes a lot of technical skills. It takes a lot of work. It took me a long time to learn this. It is, once again, a one-man show. And someone says, well, why don't you just do it simple? Just look in the camera and your web browser and just, go ahead and talk. Well, what do I want to do as a pastor and teacher with limited resources and limited staff? I am the producer, the writer, the author, and we have to do this as we do it because I wanted to produce the highest quality, not only of teaching. My goal is every week to bring you the highest level of teaching that you're going to find on the YouTube or on Rumble or on the internet, to give you information that others are not giving you. That's why I've been banned on YouTube. In fact, just this week, YouTube gave me another strike, and then Facebook hit me with a strike and so forth over things that they consider not community acceptable. Well, I'm going to just share with you, that's why you need to go to rumble.com/Dr. Rick, subscribe there, go to our broadcast there, and be a part of building that platform for us. That platform allows us to speak of things that are not sociably community standard as far as the World Economic Forum and the New World Order is concerned, and it gives us the freedom to be able to teach things that are true, honest, and biblical. Now, we're going to get into today's teaching, and I want you to get your communion elements ready. We will receive communion later in the broadcast today, but as we're receiving communion, we'll play the video, and during that video, go ahead and receive communion with you and your family, and then after the video is over, I'll join back with you. But remember, this is Christmas season. This is an opportunity, and this is what I've been sharing with you for the last couple of weeks. This is the opportunity for you as a believer to begin to share the gospel of Jesus Christ with your friends, family, and relatives, okay? It's important for you as a Christian to understand that this is not just about Santa Claus. It's not about the Christmas trees. It's not about all the glitz, the glamour, the lights, the music. All of that is a wonderful part of Christmas. But this is a great opportunity for you to be able to equip yourself to be able to share the gospel of Jesus Christ and understanding how you can articulate and prove that Jesus Christ indeed is God manifested in the flesh. One of the most disturbing things that I find in my observation of the churches today is that the churches are basically an entertainment center. They are creating an entertainment center in which there is very limited understanding of the apologetics or understanding how to understand the prophecies, understand the biblical analysis of the new birth, the biblical analysis of the birth of Jesus Christ, the death, burial, and resurrection. And basically, we're raising up a generation who are basically ignorant of all of the amazing things that we have available to us to be able to share the gospel and to prove the gospel of Jesus Christ. Now, one of the things I want to share with you that the familiar Christian story that took place 2,000 years ago, took many more centuries in the making. It wasn't just happened 2,000 years ago in Bethlehem, but thousands of years prior to that moment, God was setting up a plan and setting up a situation in which he could prophetically predict and give the evidence that this was Jesus Christ, the Messiah. It would be God manifested on earth. In speaking through the ancient prophets, God foretells how he would bring his son into the world. You see, it's all about the birth of Jesus Christ took place in a historical setting, prophetically foretold 400 and some odd years prior to. And one of the most important parts of understanding Jesus Christ and the birth and all the backdrop leading up to that is the underlying story of Christ's genealogy itself, the divine masterpiece of intrigue and suspense and prophetic fulfillment. Listen carefully. I remember back when I was 12 years old, and the church I grew up in, Marion, Indiana, they had a Bible marathon in which they were going to read the Bible 24/7 until they had completely read the Bible all the way through. And they got permission to set up a microphone and speaker down at the courthouse steps in Marion, Indiana. And as growing up, I was a paper boy, and I was getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning, and I was delivering newspapers. So when they had slots available to read the Bible at the courthouse, there was a slot that was not being fulfilled. That was 4 o'clock a.m. to 5 o'clock a.m. And so I signed up for that 4 a.m. to 5 a.m. time slot. And I get down there, and, after that, I'm going to go ahead and deliver the newspapers that I have for that morning. But at 4 a.m. in the morning, I'm downtown, it's dark and it's cold, and I'm standing on the courthouse steps in Marion, Indiana, and I begin to read. Now, what was interesting to me was that I got my point where I had to pick up was in the book of Numbers. Now, those of you who have read the book of Numbers, it is on one level, one of the most boring areas of Scripture, but at another level, it's one of the most intricately designed prophetic scripture of genealogy, proving God's plan. So I get down there in the book of Numbers, and so-and-so beget so-and-so, and so-and-so beget this, and they beget him, and they beget that, and all the begets. One of the most important underlying stories about Jesus Christ is the intrigue of his genealogy, of his history, of his ancestry, the divine masterpiece that God weaves together, that he intricately brings together to demonstrate, okay? Now, the wise men, the shepherds, familiar Christmas symbols as they gather around the baby Jesus in the manger. Choirs of angels proclaim the Lord of hosts. We have the shepherds that are coming, behold, and to watch Jesus Christ and the birth. We have the time where God speaks to Gabriel, to Zacharias, the humble Levite servant who ministered to God in the temple in Jerusalem. We have Mary being endowed by the Holy Spirit, impregnated by God as a virgin. All of these things take place in such a powerful, systematic way. Now, I want to look at some of the amazing prophecies concerning the birth of Jesus Christ, the life of Jesus Christ. I want to give you enough information that when you are talking to people this Christmas season, when you're talking to your friends and family at Christmas dinner, and I have people tell me, we don't want to talk about religion or politics when we get family get-togethers. Well, no, that's a perfect time for you to start talking about them. Now, so I don't want to offend anybody. The offense is not talking about the most important event that took place, and the reason that we're celebrating this season is not to watch another football game on Christmas Day. It's not to sit around and talk about another, whatever. It's to talk and remember and enlighten people to the knowledge of who Jesus Christ is and the importance that Jesus Christ fulfills in every one of our lives. Now, one of the things that happened, and we need to understand the transitions that's taken place. Those of you who are baby boomers, we grew up in an America that was had a concept of Judeo-Christian principles. We had a concept of the Bible. We understood because all the way through our history as a young person, Sunday school and television, we were told the Christmas story from a Christian point of view. Unfortunately, we now have a generation who has secularized this entire holiday, and they know little or nothing about Jesus Christ and the birth, let alone the number of prophecies and the power of all of the predictive nature of God speaking to his people about the validation of who Jesus Christ was and is. That's important. We're going to cover that today. Now, one of the things I want us to realize is that anyone can make predictions. Anyone can talk about predictions or have, let's call so-called prophecies. But to talk about predictions and prophecies and have them come to pass is two different concepts. You see, we've had a lot of people talk about what's going on, and let me just suggest to you, there are a lot of things that are going on right now on the planet that we talked to you about in the last couple of years that are going to attempt to be repeated in the next year. We've got an election coming up, if you didn't realize that. So you need to be aware of that. Go to my Rumble and we'll be able to discuss that further. But the fact that more statements made about the future, the more predictions made about the future, the more detail, then it's less likely that the precise fulfillment of those predictions will happen. Let's talk about the prophecy or prophesying the future. And I want us to put this in perspective. Because with all of our computers, all of our technology, all of our abilities that we have scientifically in America today, I want you to understand that even when it comes to, example, predicting a hurricane. Now, we live in South Florida, and every year the NOAA comes out with a prediction of how many named hurricanes that they're predicting for the year, 13, 14, 18, whatever it may be. And then they also add to that, there'll be 4 or 5 making landfall. Now, this is usually a year in advance. They'll start coming out with that in the next few weeks, telling you how many predictive hurricanes will be evolved in the Atlantic Ocean over the next few months. Now, they'll tell you there's going to be 5 that will make landfall. Now, they can't tell you where those landfalls are going to be. They can't tell you that they're going to hit Miami, they're going to hit Georgia, they're going to hit the East Coast. They can't tell you that even a week in advance of the hurricane. They can't tell you 3 days out in the Atlantic Ocean, and they give you that predictive cone. You know what I'm talking about, that cone that comes out, and it gives you, it can be 100 to 500 mile range of where they're suggesting that the hurricane may get landfall. Now, that's with all of our technology, all the science that's available. Even in the hurricane season, we cannot accurately predict the landfall, and it's 3 days away. Is everybody still in the right place? Now, but let me ask you a question. Let's project 700 years, 800 years from now. Let's look at 2823. 2823. Can you, with any degree of assurity, tell me who is going to be the president in 2823, 800 years from now? Can you tell me what city that person will be born in? Can you tell me the exact location of his or her birthplace? But that's exactly what the prophet Micah did concerning the birth of Jesus. You see, 700 years before Jesus was born, 700 years before Jesus was born, Micah chapter 5, verse number 2, but you, Bethlehem, Ephratah, though you were small, okay, among the clans of Judah, out of you will come for me one who will be the ruler over Israel, whose origins are from ancient times. Micah chapter 5, verse number 2. 700 years before the birth of Jesus, Micah, through the word of God, prophesies the Messiah would be born in Bethlehem. Think about that for a moment. You can't tell me who's going to be president next year. But Micah's telling you where the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords, the Messiah, would be born. The exact city. Now, what is the likelihood of a person predicting today the exact cause of the death of the new unknown president in 2823? Now, we don't even know America is going to exist then. Probably not, because it just doesn't happen that long, where countries and civilizations exist that long a period of time uninterrupted. But if you assume that the United States is going to be here 28-23, that there will be a president, can you tell me how that president is going to die? You can't tell me who's going to be president 1,000 years from now, but David told you exactly 1,000 years prior to Jesus' death how he would die. And he describes in the book of Psalms the crucifixion. Now think about that. And what's the likelihood of predicting the time in which a person would appear or would be born? But that's exactly what Daniel did. 530 years before Jesus Christ was born on this planet, Daniel began to predict the prophecy and put the year in the 490 years, the 7 weeks, study the book of Daniel. He predicts the exact year in which the Messiah would be born. What's the probability of you being able to do that? And what's the likelihood that a person would predict 50 specific prophecies about a person in the future, doesn't matter who it is, we're now talking about Jesus, who they would never meet? So let's talk about this potential president 500 years from now, 1,000 years from now. You never meet them, but you're going to tell me 50 exact specific things that would happen. What's the likelihood that that person that you're talking about that you have never met and you don't even know is going to exist would fulfill all of those 50 prophecies specifically? And what if out of those 50 prophecies, 25 of those predictions would be about what other people would do to him and were completely outside of his control? Think about those concepts for a moment. Yet that's exactly what Jesus Christ did. That's what God did from the very beginning. God, in the very beginning, in Genesis chapter 3, verse 14 and 15, began to set up a system. He says, I am going to bring forth a plan, and there will be one who comes who will bruise the head of the serpent's seed, and it will destroy the works of the devil. So how does a person arrange certain things in his life? I want you to think about this moment. Look at your own life. Did you arrange the city that you were going to be born in? I was born in Indianapolis, Indiana. Did I have any control over that? For some reason, could I just say, no, I don't want to be born in Indianapolis, Indiana. I want to be born in Memphis, Tennessee. If you're born in Atlanta, Georgia, why couldn't you just decide you wanted to be born in Phoenix? You don't have control over that. Now, what if you're projected and you're prophesied that you're going to be born in Bethlehem, a specific city in which the parents did not live? The parents did not live. Joseph and Mary did not live in Bethlehem. When Mary became pregnant with the Messiah, Jesus Christ, Joseph and Mary lived in a completely different region. They did not live in Bethlehem. Now, how can you make sure that a child that's about to be born, that you are going to have that child in Bethlehem specifically? Well, isn't it interesting that God began to move in such a way that he caused the leadership of that time, that everyone, the king says everyone has to go back to your city of origin. The city of origin for Joseph was Bethlehem. And they were to have a census and collect taxes. Now, isn't it interesting? On the same year, in the same last months in which Jesus Christ is to be born, it has been ordered that he and his family were to go to Bethlehem for a census and taxation. Now, we clearly know that Mary was obviously late in her pregnancy as she's riding on a donkey into Bethlehem. She gets there and Joseph knocks on the door of the inn. The innkeeper says, "I'm sorry, I don't have any more rooms." It wasn't because Joseph was poor, had to go to the manger. There was no more rooms. Joseph tries to make an appeal to the innkeeper, says, "But you don't understand, my wife is about to give birth." And the innkeeper says, "I'm sorry, the only thing I have available would be the manger." Isn't it interesting that God would order a census by the king for taxation for Joseph and Mary to travel in the last months of her pregnancy to get exactly on time to get into Bethlehem to be born? How can you arrange that? How do you arrange your own death, specifically by crucifixion? Yet the book of Psalms says that the Messiah would be crucified. But how do you arrange that? You're born in a manger in a city of Jerusalem because of taxation and census. And you're also prophesied that you would die specifically by crucifixion 33 years later. How do you arrange for that? How do you arrange to have your executioners gamble for your clothing? Yet Psalms 22 verse 18 says that's exactly what would happen. That was fulfilled in John chapter 16 verse number 19. How do you arrange that? How do you create that system if this is not a divine providential plan set up before the foundations of the earth, in which God would begin to move into the kingdom of this world and begin to transition all of the issues? How do you arrange for someone to betray you in advance? Judas, obviously. But how do you arrange for that? How do you arrange for Judas to sell you for 30 pieces of silver, specifically prophesied in the Old Testament? How do you arrange to be born as God? How do you make that up? And how do you escape from a grave and appear to people after being killed? How do you do that? You see, this begins to put into perspective that God is doing such an amazing prophetic movement that at least 450-year gap between the prophecies written down about Jesus and later their fulfillment in the life of Jesus Christ. 450 years is the shortest time span between the prophecies. Perfect example of that, Isaiah chapter 7, verse 13 through 14. Old Testament says, "Then Isaiah said, the Lord himself will give you a sign." Notice it, the Lord himself will give you a sign. "The virgin will conceive and give birth to a son, and will call him Emmanuel," which being interpreted is God with us. How do you, hundreds of years before Jesus is born, get the prophecy, and then when Gabriel comes and speaks to Mary and says, "Thou shalt call his name Jesus, for he shall save his people from their sins. He shall be called Emmanuel," God with us. All of this is a fulfillment of prophecies taking place hundreds of years prior to. Now I'm going to stop right here. I'm going to take a little pause, and I'm going to give you an opportunity to give. Now, an opportunity to give. Now, as I shared with you a few moments ago, this is a one-man show. This requires me to prepare not only some of the best teachings, but also to try to give you the best technological graphics, the best information that I can in the highest level that I professionally can do myself. Obviously, the program could be a lot better, but given my resources and my technical abilities, I'm doing the best I can. Why am I doing the best I can? To give you the best product so that when you sit down with your family or you share this link with a friend, they're going to look at something that has quality and is worth looking at. So I ask you to take a moment, take your cell phone out, text 73256, 73256, put Christ Life Center in the subject line, and give a donation today. And thank you for your giving. It's greatly appreciated. Let's get back.
The man I'm talking about was not a Scrooge now. He was a kind, a decent, a mostly good man, generous to his family and upright in his dealings with other men, but he just did not believe in all of that incarnation stuff which the churches proclaim at Christmas time. It just did not make sense, and he was too honest to pretend otherwise. He could not swallow the Jesus story about God coming to earth as a man. He told his wife, "I'm truly sorry to distress you, but I'm just not going with you to church this Christmas Eve." He said he'd feel like a hypocrite, that he'd much rather just stay home, but that he would wait up for them. So he stayed, and they went to the midnight service. Now, shortly after the family drove away in the car, snow began to fall. He went to the window to watch the flurries getting heavier and heavier. Then he went back to his fireside chair, began to read his newspaper. Minutes later, he was startled by a thudding sound, and then another, then yet another. At first he thought somebody must be throwing snowballs against the living room window. But when he went to the front door to investigate, he found a flock of birds huddled out there miserably in the snow. They had been caught in the storm. In a desperate search for shelter, they had tried to fly through his large landscape window. That was what had been making the sound. Well, he couldn't let those poor creatures just lie there and freeze. So he remembered the barn where his children stabled their pony. That would provide a warm shelter. All he would have to do is direct the birds into that shelter. Quickly he put on a coat and galoshes, and he tramped through the deepening snow to the barn, and he opened the doors wide. And inside the barn he turned on a light so the birds would know the way in. But the birds did not come in. So he figured that food would entice them. He went back into the house and fetched some breadcrumbs and sprinkled those on the snow, making a trail of breadcrumbs to the yellow-lighted, wide-open doorway of the stable. But to his dismay, the birds ignored the breadcrumbs. The birds just continued to flop around helplessly in the snow. He tried catching them. He could not. He tried shooing them into the barn by walking around them, waving his arms, but instead they scattered in every direction except into the warm, lighted barn. And that's when he realized that they were afraid of him. They were afraid of him. To him, he reasoned, "I'm a strange, terrifying creature. If only I could think of some way to let them know that they can trust me, that I'm not trying to hurt them but to help them." But how? Any move he made tended to frighten them and confuse them. They just would not follow. They would not be led or shooed because they feared him. And he thought to himself, if only I could be a bird now, if I could be a bird and mingle with them and speak their language and tell them not to be afraid, then I could show them the way to the safe, warm barn. But I would have to be one of them, wouldn't I? So they could see and hear and understand. At that moment, the church bells began to ring. The sound reached his ears above the sounds of the wind, and he stood there listening to the bells. Adeste Fidelis. Listening to the bells, pealing the glad tidings of Christmas, and he sank to his knees in the snow. Paul Harvey, I hope for you and those you love, this will be a wonderfully Merry Christmas.